get-go.
Just want to start today with a trigger warning disclaimer. This podcast contains descriptions of death and drowning. Hi, I'm Katie Carpenter.
I'm Terry Kovanitz.
We apologize for any and all mistakes today as we begin this episode of Titanic Transcripts.
Frank Osman has been sworn. Mr. Osman, how old are you?
38, sir.
You are a seaman?
Yes, sir.
What is your duty? Able seaman or deckhand? And for how long?
Since I was 14 and a half.
Navy and Merchant Marine both?
Yes, both Navy and Merchant Marine service.
Which first?
Navy.
And for how long?
11 years and 3 months.
Since then, you have been with the White Star?
Yes, sir.
On which boats have you been besides this one?
The Oceanic was the only one besides this one.
Where were you when the collision occurred?
Outside the Seaman's dining room.
And please tell what happened.
Well, I was waiting for one bell, which they strike, one bell just before the quarter of the hour, before the 4 hours, when you get a call to relieve, and I heard 3 bells strike, and I thought there was a ship ahead. Just after that, I heard the collision, and I went out on the foresquare, that is, the forewall deck, just against the Seaman's mess room. Looking in the forewall square, I saw ice there. I went down below and stepped down there and seen the ship was getting a bit of a list. Then they had passed the order that all the seamen had to go up and clear away all the boats. All of us went up and cleared away the boats. After that, we loaded all the boats that were there, and I went away in number 2 boat, and the 4th from the last to leave the ship.
Was yours lowered first, second, or third?
We were 4th from the last, about the 16th boat to lower.
Who has command of that boat?
The 4th officer, Mr. Boxhall.
And did he direct the loading of this boat?
No, sir. That was the chief officer, Mr. Murdoch.
How many were in that boat? First the seamen and then the passengers.
There was 1 able seaman, sir, a cook and a steward and an officer. That was all the men there that was in the boat out of the crew. There was 1 man, a 3rd-class passenger, and the remainder were women and children.
And you were the able seaman?
Yes, sir.
How many women were in the boat?
I could not say exactly how many there were, but there were between 25 and 30 all told.
Including the seamen?
Including the crew. This was one of the emergency boats.
Did you have any trouble in lowering the boat?
No, sir. The boat went down very easy, very steady indeed.
And was it full?
Oh, yes, sir. Full right up.
Did you get along comfortably, or was there suffering?
There was only 1 lady there, a 1st-class passenger. I did not know her name, who was worrying. That was the only thing that she said.
In what order were you taken onto the Carpathia?
I was the first boat back, sir. After I got in the boat, the officer had found a bunch of rockets, which was put in the boat by mistake for a box of biscuits. Having them in the boat, the officer fired some off, and the Carpathia came to us first and picked us up a half an hour before anybody else.
Did you steer for a light?
No, sir. We saw a light, but the other boats were making for it, and the officer was not sure whether it was a light or whether it was not. And as he had the rockets, they could repeat the signals.
Did you see that light?
Yes, sir.
And what did you think it was?
I thought it was a sailing vessel from the banks.
When did you last have sight of that light?
About an hour afterwards.
What do you think about it? Did it sail away?
Yes, sir. She sailed right away.
And you are sure you saw that light?
Yes, sir. Quite sure.
What was it, like a stern light?
No, sir. A masthead light.
Does a sailing ship have a white light on her masthead?
Yes, sir.
You are sure that light was not a star?
I am sure it was not a star.
Just what happened when you were on the boat? Did you see this iceberg?
Not until the morning.
Are you sure it was the one?
Yes, sir. You could see it was the one, sir.
How high was it?
At a rough estimate, it was 100 feet out of the water.
And what shape was it?
It was round, and then it had 1 big point sticking up on one side of it, sir.
And what was its color?
It was apparently dark, like dirty ice.
How far away from it were you when you saw it?
About 100 yards.
And how did you know that this was the one you struck?
We could see it was the biggest berg there, and the other ones would not have done so much damage, I think.
Was there any mark on the side as if it had collided with something?
It looked as if there was a piece broken off after she struck, and the ice fell on board. I went and picked up a piece of the ice, and I took it down below in my sleeping room.
There was some little time that you were down below, was there not?
Yes, sir. Matter of 10 minutes?
Not more than 10 minutes?
Not more than 10 minutes.
I do not see quite how you account for all the time after the collision before you took to the boat.
It is only just like walking out the door.
About what time was the boat lowered in which you went away?
I could not say exactly the time.
About how long after the collision?
About an hour, I suppose. Maybe an hour and a half.
You say the boat listed. Did it list to the port or the starboard?
To the starboard.
About how much?
A matter of about that angle. It was a gradual list, about 4 to 5 degrees.
Did you take any part in loading any of the other boats?
Yes, I helped load 4 of the boats on the starboard side.
Was there any panic?
No, there was no panic at all. I was helping women and children in the boat, and the crew was lowering boats.
Was there any panic?
I never seen no panic there.
When you were down on that lower deck, did you see persons moving about there?
No, there was nobody there at all because Mr. Murdoch was singing out, "Is there any more women and children to put in my boat?"
I mean, before you went up to man the boat, were there any people moving about where you were down on the lower deck?
Oh, no, sir, there was nobody there.
And where are the seamen's quarters?
Up here underneath the forecastle head.
They're on the upper deck underneath the forecastle head?
That is it, sir.
And how many seamen are there?
44 altogether.
You did not have all the boat's crew there then. There are more than 44 in the crew, are there not? You mean the able seamen, do you not?
Yes, sir.
You do not mean quartermasters and such as that?
No, sir, I do not count quartermasters with the seamen.
Do you count lookout men with the able seamen?
Yes, they all live in the same place, but the quartermaster is in a different place on the other side.
You do not mean that those were all of the crew, even excluding the quartermasters, do you?
That is all there is in the crew, sir.
Just count those again.
There was 25 altogether in both watches, 13 in one watch and 12 in the other. Then there was 2 deckmen, the cook of the forecastle, 2 window cleaners, 6 lookout men, and 2 masters-at-arms counted with the seamen.
You are just counting the men in your mess.
Yes, sir.
And how many quartermasters?
6 quartermasters, 1 boatswain, boatswain's mate, carpenter, and joiner.
How far were you away from the boat when she sank?
60 to 100 yards.
Was there much suction?
There was no suction whatever. When we were in the boat, we shoved off from the ship, and I said to the officer, "See if you can get alongside, to see if you can get any more hands, see if you can squeeze any more hands in." So the women then started getting nervous after I said that, and the officer said, "All right." The women disagreed to that. We pulled around to the starboard side of the ship and found we could not get to the starboard side because it was listing too far. We pulled astern that way again, and after we got astern, we lay on our oars and we saw the ship go down. After she got to a certain angle, she exploded, broke in halves, and it seemed to me as if all the engines and everything that was in the after part slid out into the forward part, and the after part came up right again, and as soon as it came up right, down it went again.
Oh, what do you think those explosions were?
The boilers bursting.
And what makes you think that?
The cold water coming under the red-hot boilers causes the explosion.
You reasoned that out?
Yes, but you could see the explosions by the smoke coming right up the funnels.
Did you see any steam and smoke coming?
Yes.
Did you see any sparks?
Well, it was all black. It looked like as if it was lumps of coal and all that.
Coming up through the funnels?
Yeah, through the funnels.
That is, there was a great amount of black smoke coming up through the funnels just after this explosion?
Yes, just after the explosion.
And there were lumps of coal, etc., coming up?
Yes, pretty big lumps. I do not know what it was.
Oh, did any water come up?
I never seen no water, only the steam and the very black smoke.
Why did you not go back to the place where the boat had sunk after she had gone down?
The women were all nervous, and we pulled around as far as we could get to her so that the women would not see and it would not cause a panic. We got as close as we would dare by the women. We could not have taken any more hands into the boat. It was impossible. We might have got one in, but that's about all. The steerage passengers were all down below, and after she got a certain distance, it seemed to me that all the passengers climbed up her.
Steerage passengers, too?
All the passengers there were.
That were left on board?
Yes.
Did you see any of them climb up there?
It looked blacker. She was white around there, and it looked like a big crowd of people.
Then you think the passengers, first, second, and third class, went up on the top deck?
On the top deck, yes.
Do you think there were any passengers down in here when she went down?
I do not think so, but I could not say as to that.
Was there any panic amongst these steerage passengers when they started manning the boats?
No. I saw several people come up from there and go straight up on the boat deck. That is one thing I saw. And the men stood back while the women and children got into the boat.
Steerage passengers as well as others?
One steerage passenger, a man and his wife and 2 children, were in my boat. They all belonged to one family.
You took the man?
Yes, that was the only male passenger we had in the boat.
What do you think? Do you think they believed the ship would float?
Well, I thought so myself. I thought it was going to go down to a certain depth and then it would float after that.
Oh, did you hear any conversation around among the passengers as to whether she would sink or not?
No, I never heard anything amongst the passengers as to whether she would sink. The only thing I heard was one passenger saying that he was going in the boat and stand by the ship.
You heard one passenger say that?
Yes.
Would you rather have gotten into the boat or stayed on the ship?
I was put into the boat.
Which would you rather have done?
Well, you see, it was rather dangerous to stop aboard.
The Titanic was dangerous?
Yes.
So in your judgment, it was safer to have gone in the boat than to have stayed on the Titanic?
Oh, yes, sir.
That was when you left?
Yes, sir.
What did you think when the first boat was launched?
I did not think she was going down then.
Did you carry any messages for any of the officers around the ship?
No, sir. All the seamen were taking the covers off and getting the falls out. They stow all the falls on the inside of the boats.
Did the boat gear run off all right?
The gear worked all right in my boat.
How many boats did you help load?
3 on the starboard side, 1 on the port, and then I got in my own boat.
Did the gear run all right in all cases?
Yes, sir.
Was the gear all in the boat that should have been in your boat?
In my boat, so far as I know. I do not know whether they were supplied with biscuits in my boat. I do not think they do that for an emergency boat.
Were there biscuits on your boat?
No, sir. There was water in the boat, but there were no biscuits.
Do you think if life rafts had been on board, you could have launched those and saved any passengers?
There was plenty of time left, sir.
To have launched life rafts?
Plenty of time.
If you had had life rafts then, in your opinion, could you have saved some more passengers?
We could have saved some more. If they had rafts and boats, they had time enough to save every soul aboard there.
Which, in your judgment, are better, the rafts or the boats, on a steamer of that size?
Rafts are as safe as anything.
Thank you for your time, and that is all I need from you today. Edward Wheelton has been sworn, and we now call you to the stand. What is your age and occupation?
I'm 28 years of age. I've been with the White Star Line for 6 years as a first-class steward.
Go on, and in your own way, state what occurred on the steamer Titanic after the collision with the iceberg.
I had just come off watch. I went to bed. I was awakened between 10 minutes to 12 and a quarter to 12 by a shock. It felt as if it was the dropping of a propeller or something like that. I got out of bed. I lifted the port and I looked out of the port. Everything was calm. It was very cold. I went to the door of my room and spoke to some of the men, and then I got back in bed again. I was roused next by someone shouting, "Watertight doors!" I came outside. The order was, "Get your life belts, get up to boat stations." I went back, I put my pants on over my pajamas, put my slippers on, and my overcoat. I went down to the deck. They were just getting away number 5 boat then. I assisted in getting away lifeboat number 5. I was ordered to the storeroom, so I went down to the storeroom. The way I went to the storeroom was down B deck, along B deck. As I went along B deck, I met Mr. Andrews, the builder, who was opening the rooms and looking to see if there was anyone in, and closing the doors again. I went along B deck and used what we call the accommodation staircase, which goes through the ship and is used by the stewards. I went down to the storeroom and I got a bottle of biscuits and carried them up to the main dining room, through the reception room, up the main staircase. I got onto the deck. The boats had gone. They were working on number 7. I meant number 5 had gone. They were working on number 7. I went to number 7 and assisted in lowering number 7. Well, I think it was number 7. Mr. Lowe told Mr. Ismay to get the hell out of it because I was the steward who stood back of Mr. Lowe. We worked at number 7 together and got her down, and then number 9, Mr. Murdoch was there, and Mr. Ismay stood up by all the boats I saw get away. I walked along when number 9 went, and Mr. Murdoch, the first officer, turned around. He sent the assistant second steward down to A deck, and he said to me, "You go too." He got hold of me by the left arm and he said, "You go too." We went down to A deck. Number 11 boat was hanging in the davits. We got into the boat. Mr. Murdoch shouted, "Women and children first." He was on the top deck then, standing by the taffrail. We loaded the boat with women and children and took in a few of the crew. I think there were there were 8 or 9 men in the boat altogether. That was including our crew. I think there were 1 or 2 passengers, but I really could not say. I shouted to Mr. Murdoch, "The boat is full, sir." And he said, "All right." He said, "Have your sailors in?" And I said, "No, sir." So he told 2 sailors to jump into the boat. We lowered away. Everything went very nice, very smoothly, until we touched the water. We pushed away from the ship's side and had just a slight difficulty in hoisting the afterblock. We were not there a minute. The sailor got on the block and loosened the tackle. We pulled away from the ship. We pulled away until we were about 300 yards away from the ship. I looked around into the boat. I saw the boat was pretty well crowded because I had some little difficulty in rowing, and because the passengers were so close together, I kept hitting my hands against the passengers. We bent to our oars until the ship eventually went down. We rowed around and tried to get to the other boats, to get close to them. We pulled toward a light, but we did not seem to get any closer to it until daybreak. A lady back of me complained of the cold, and I took my coat off and gave it to her. We sighted the Carpathia and put the boat about and pulled toward her. We got alongside the Carpathia, and I made the rope fast on the off side of the lifeboat. That was hanging up from the Carpathia, that rope, and I stood by until the boat was unloaded and the officer shouted, "Come up."
How many boats did you see loaded?
They were lowering number 5 when I left to go to the storeroom, and I saw number 7 and number 9. I went away in number 11, sir.
And what was Mr. Ismay doing?
He was standing aft, sir, and he was going like this, lower, 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 while they were lowering the boats.
Who was?
Mr. Ismay, sir. He stood right by the davit with one hand on the davit and one hand in motion to the officer lowering.
Why was he motioning to the officer?
That was to let him know how far he wanted him to go. If you're lowering cargo or anything else, stores or anything else, that motion of the hand means to lower, and if the man stops making that motion with his hand, that means to stop lowering.
Oh, he was regulating the lowering down to the water?
Yes.
How far off was the water at that time from the upper deck?
It was pretty dark, but I should imagine it was about 70 or 75 feet.
So far as your observation went, were boats number 5, number 7, number 9, and number 11 loaded?
Well, as soon as I started, I did not see the finishing of the loading number 5 because I was sent to the storeroom, and I arrived on deck when number 7 was lowered, sir.
And how full was that loaded?
It seemed to be pretty full. I could not estimate the number of people because we were looking this way and you could only see the front line in the boat like that.
And how about number 9?
I could not say as to number 9, sir.
Well, how about number 11? How many were in that boat?
I should say there were about 58 all told, sir.
Did these boats all take their load on the upper deck, or did they take part of it there and part of it on the lower decks?
Number 5 and number 7 and number 9 took their loads on the top deck, the boat deck. Number 7 was lowered to A deck.
Did it take all its passengers from A deck?
Yes, barring the 2 sailors that jumped from the top when the chief officer told them to man the boat.
Why did it take them there instead of on the upper deck?
I believe they were assisting with the tackle on the top, those 2 sailors.
No, why was your boat loaded in the main at A deck instead of the upper deck?
I could not say, sir. All the women and children were sent down because the steward brought them down, sir.
Prior to that time, they had been on the upper deck?
Yes, sir.
How many boats were left on that side when you left?
I could not say, sir. I think there were 2.
Was Mr. Ismay still there?
Mr. Ismay, the last I saw of him was when he was sent away in number 9. That was when I went down to A deck to number 11 boat, sir. He stood there at the falls.
Did he do anything besides help regulate the lowering of the boat?
He helped the women and children into the boat, sir, and he told the men to make way.
What did he mean by making way?
They were all standing around in a circle, and a lady would come on deck, and he meant to make a gap so that she could come through.
During that trip, had there been any drills of the men at the boats?
Not as regards to us. We were generally ordered below to attend to meals before leaving port.
Well, was there a drill the day you left port?
There was a general muster, sir.
How long had the crew of the boat been together?
Not very long, but I had sailed with quite a number of the men myself before that.
But how long had the crew of the Titanic been together on that ship?
From the day we signed, sir. I think it was on a Friday, sir.
That Friday before sailing?
Yes, the Friday before. We sailed on a Wednesday, sir.
During that time, was there any drill?
Not that I know of, sir.
What is customary regarding drill on steamships? How often do they have drills?
Every Sunday at sea.
Did you have a drill Sunday before the collision?
No, sir.
Why not?
I could not say, sir, unless it was the number of steerage passengers, third-class passengers, that we had.
Well, why should that prevent you from having drill?
Because if we would all go to drill, meals would not be ready for the passengers.
The crew, then, was taken from different steamers belonging to the White Star Line service.
Not only the White Star, but other ships.
Other services?
Yes, sir.
Were you assigned to any particular boat?
Yes, sir.
What boat?
Number 5, sir.
How many men were assigned to each boat?
That I cannot say, sir, because there were 500 sailors. I've never counted them.
What class of men are assigned to the boats?
So many firemen, so many sailors, so many quartermasters, and so many stewards, sir.
Are the stewards supposed to be the oarsmen?
Well, you see, it's supposed to be a boat's crew that is to assist in lowering as well as rowing, sir.
How many constitute a boat's crew?
That I could not say, sir.
Or how many customarily constitute a boat's crew?
About 8, I should say, sir.
Is that the number that is supposed to be available in case of emergency?
I should say about 8 or 10, sir, a smooth night like that.
How many were there on your boat?
I should say about 8 or 9, sir.
Of the crew?
Oh, no, sir, that included a passenger.
How many of the crew?
I should say about 8, then.
How many men were there in addition to that 8?
1 passenger, I think. Of course, there might have been another down below. We never looked for him. We never looked anywhere around. We were attending to our business, sir. We had no time to search around.
Was there any disorder while you were there?
None whatever, sir.
Did there appear to be a scarcity of men on the upper deck to man these boats?
No, sir.
When your boat was loaded, were there any women and children left on the deck?
Not one. The only trouble we had was with the one lady who would not get into the boat. We attempted twice to get her in, and the last time I said to my friend helping me, "Pull her in," and we pulled her in.
And then she remained in, did she?
Yes, she remained in. She turned back the first time and went away from the rail.
Who was in command of your boat?
The quartermaster, I believe.
And what was his name?
I could not tell you what his name was.
What was the name of the man passenger in your boat?
I could not tell. I did not ask him.
Oh, did you know the names of any of the ladies in your boat?
No, sir. I never made it my business to know their names.
Did you see the captain during that time?
I did not, sir.
Did you see the ship go down?
I did, sir.
Could you see the passengers on the ship when it went down?
I could not, sir.
When you left the ship, where were the bulk of the remaining passengers located?
There was no bulk at all, sir. They were scattered all around the deck.
Which deck?
There were a very few, only our own men, left on A deck when the boat went down, sir.
As you went down to the deck below...
I did not see any deck below, sir, because it's all closed in.
That would be B deck.
We passed B, sir.
How about C deck?
That was closed. There was none of these lower decks at all.
Well, where were the steerage passengers? Did you see any of them?
No, sir, I did not.
There were about 1,500 passengers left on the ship, or at least 1,500 people altogether. That is the fact, I believe. Have you any idea what part of the ship they were in when you left the ship?
I think they were all around the ship, all over the place.
Did your boat rescue any people in the water?
No, sir, we never saw one.
You rode some distance from the Titanic, did you?
Should imagine about 300 yards, sir. That's a rough estimate.
Did your boat make any effort to go back?
No, sir.
Was your boat fully loaded?
Yes, sir. I thought so, sir, because it was rather difficult in rowing. I kept catching the people with my oar.
How about waking up the passengers? Whose duty is it to do that when an accident of this kind occurs?
The bedroom stewards.
Were you a bedroom steward?
No, sir.
Do you know whether they did wake them up?
I believe so, sir. I could not say.
Do you know how many of the crew were saved?
I have read in the papers, sir. There were 210 all told.
And what proportion of these were women?
I think there were about 15.
How many women were there in the crew?
Could not tell you. There were stewardesses and Turkish bath attendants.
Do you know the number?
No, sir.
Did they number 50, do you think?
I could not say. No, I do not suppose they would.
Out of a total of 750 who were saved, there were 210 who belonged to the crew. How do you account for the fact that so large a proportion of the people saved belonged to the crew?
Well, I would think, myself, the men took a chance and jumped overboard and swam for it and were picked up by boats. We had very powerful swimmers aboard the ship. Some of the best men I ever saw in the water were on that ship, sir.
But you saw no men who were saved in that way.
Not in our boat, sir.
Did you see them being taken into any other boat?
No, it was too dark. I could not see, sir.
Did you see anything of either of the rafts or collapsible boats?
No, sir. We did not sight another boat until daybreak next morning. We saw the lights, but we did not get near enough to them.
Did you see anything of Mr. Clarence Moore or Major Butt?
No, sir.
Did you know them?
I did not, sir.
Did you know Mr. Frank Millet?
I did not, sir.
Have you given your address?
Norwood House, Belmore Road, Shirley, Southampton, England.
How about the steerage passengers? Did any of them come up on the upper deck?
Oh, yes, they could come up just as I did. When I went down to get the bottle of biscuits, I had to go right down to their quarters for it. The storeroom lies below their quarters. There was nothing to prevent me from going down to the storeroom.
Out of the 210 of the crew who were saved, only 15 were women?
I think about that number, but I could not say.
Is there any particular point that you would like to speak of, or anything in regards to the collision that you know that you think you ought to tell?
I would like to say something about the bravery exhibited by the first officer, Mr. Murdoch. He was perfectly cool and very calm.
And he was lost?
Yes, sir, he was lost.
You on the starboard side, were you?
Yes.
And how many boats were on that side?
I could not say just how many there were.
How many had been lowered before you took number 11?
I believe the emergency boat had gone, number 3 had gone, number 5 was going as I went to the storeroom, number 7 had gone, number 9 had gone, and number 11, that was my boat.
And that would make 6 boats?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. Wheelton, I'd like to thank you for your time, and that is all. Okay, first, I just want to say, could you imagine waiting for the bell so you could get to work, and then instead it's the 3 bells? Because, oh my gosh, and then all chaos is breaking loose around you. Oh, that would be intense. But I really, really like Osman. I think he's cool.
He seems like a homey down home sailor boy.
Yeah, we do what we do. That's what we do.
Yeah.
And I like that the rockets were there instead of biscuits. Dang it.
Yes. I was going to say I'm not sure which one I'd rather. The rockets are probably more practical.
I would have sent him to get some more biscuits too, personally.
Well, I like
we could be there for days.
Our next guy, that was his first order of business, ran down and got some biscuits. And I like also that he took some ice down to his room.
Oh, yeah.
Grab some of that.
I put this in my pocket. That was so human.
Exactly.
So...
Do what with it? Oh, that's neat.
And that he thought that he saw the actual iceberg.
Yeah, so I was sort of hoping he would say something. I think I mentioned this once
to define
before,
it, yes.
But there is a theory, sort of, that has maybe been debunked, maybe not. But there is speculation that you can see the iceberg that hit the Titanic because supposedly it has a red mark on it. But then in later years, it was like a commonly held belief, I guess. And then in later years, it was sort of debunked that it's just some algae inside the thing. So I was kind of hoping he would say, you could tell it was that
red
one.
Mark on it. Oh, that would have been cool.
Yeah, so I was keeping an ear open for that, but it doesn't sound like it.
And he had quite a different account of how the ship went down.
Oh, yeah, and he was very certain about it, too.
Yeah.
And because there's been a lot of sort of speculation or guesswork about the explosions, and I don't know.
And
but
the
he
coal
was very
and stuff
much,
coming up?
That must have been
what
weird.
now?
Whoa,
how did no one else notice that?
Yeah.
That's insane.
And then he was just very much, it was the explosions, and you could see the steam, and then it split in half, and this part bounced back up, and then went right down, and,
And there was coal flying everywhere, and fire and smoke and brimstone.
But yeah, you're right. His is very different. There's sort of no questioning. But then again, we have that he saw the light ahead.
Yes. That's so, yeah.
So it's just across the board.
And
everyone
some people see it bright, some it's faint.
Yeah. And then he thought it was a masthead on a ship. And, everybody's got a different idea of what the light is, but the light was very certainly there.
Yes. Very interesting. And I loved that the women were like, no, we're not going to pick up any more people. So they just, let's just turn the boat a little bit and slide
turn their
over.
heads. We're just going to gently back
That
up.
was so funny
Stupid
and cool.
women.
Very clever.
But at least they tried to help. At least they were trying.
And I liked that they let the man on with his wife and 2 children. That was really like, aw.
Yeah. And then we're hearing, this is kind of the first time that, well, maybe not. We might have had some blips of it, but where he said that there was definitely time enough to save everyone if they had more, like, so
Yeah.
I don't know that there was time enough to save everyone, but it's just interesting that he says it.
Because that collapsible boat was like, people weren't even in it yet, and it was going with the water.
Yeah.
So if there were more people to get more people into the boats.
And then he was saying that they wanted to get back by the side, but they couldn't because it was already tipping too far.
So, but maybe if there were more people and more of those lowery contraptions that worked so well. But otherwise, it just went down so fast that I don't see.
Yeah, I agree. But it's just interesting to hear him say it with such certainty that yes. Absolutely.
That raised my eyebrow as well. And Senator, which was safer, staying on or getting off? Well, now everybody knows now, but
also,
at the
what
time,
would he rather? What does it matter? He did what his job was.
At the time, you might have thought it, but now I can tell you definitely it was
in
safer not to be on it.
Well, and he even said from the first boat going down, he did. Or no, is that the next guy that said from the first boat going down, number 5 boat, he didn't think it was going to sink, but then by the time he got in number 11, he was like, yeah, it's sinking.
Well, yeah, and he also said that he didn't think it was going to sink. Mm-hmm. Absolutely not. At that point, yeah.
Yeah, so very interesting, but we're getting a lot of echoes of other people's
He thought it would go down a certain depth and then it would float, which is really interesting and very clearly defined. Yes. Now it makes sense to me. And he continued after this. He continued working on the ocean.
Yeah, as a sailor.
For like maybe 12, 14 years. And then he and his wife were running a pub and, joking and everything. And then he just went down the basement of the pub and hanged himself. And that was the end of
my gosh.
I know.
Whoa.
I mean, he might have had some mental slippage, but they're not sure what.
Wow.
Because he was like joking and laughing and then he was just gone.
Could you imagine?
I know.
Oh, my goodness.
Goosebumps. Like, not in a good way.
No. All right.
Okay.
Well, on that note,
Let's
we're going to
switch
over.
Mr. Wheelton. Burr, how cold are these poor people in their jammies? And I just put my clothes over my jammies and kept my slippers on. And man, they did not think.
No one's in their boots.
No. Nobody's bundled.
I love at the very, to start his account, because he's got a very thorough and detailed account, and I mean, we hear a lot about even which stairways he's using and stuff, and I liked it, and it's very specific, and I'm sure the senator ate it up, but I just like that at the beginning of it, he's like, well, Mr. Lowe told Ismay to get the hell out of it.
Yeah.
And then, just has to slip that in, sentence 1 or 2. There was a curse word uttered.
Because we're going to talk about Ismay, whether we like it or not.
And someone did say H-E double hockey sticks.
And I heard it, and I almost fell over.
Just get that out of the way.
That he gave his coat to the lady.
Was very nice.
So nice.
And this is also the first we're hearing of, that he saw people opening and closing doors to make sure that...
Yes.
And I'm sure part of it, checking on the crew, but then we haven't really heard anything about...
That was at Andrews or Anderson.
Yeah.
The one.
Did you wake people, that kind of thing. Everyone's kind of going on these assumptions, but now we're getting at least a little bit...
Somebody was doing something.
There are some people there...
Yes.
Check in and stuff. So that was good to hear, even though we know that the loss was very significant. At least it was good.
And I'm glad to see that he was able to go below steerage so that they weren't locked in like on the movie.
Yeah.
That
you could get up and down.
That's very
there's probably several different stairways and stuff, but
And I liked that they didn't know if they were stowaways because they couldn't hardly row because of so many people.
They didn't even check.
Whoops.
Yeah, oh, sorry, excuse me, sorry.
And a very interesting reason not to have any drills. Because
then we couldn't feed
the stewards wouldn't get their food in time.
Yeah. And
it
then
must
he's
have been
the
just
only one that
hopping.
that they loaded on A deck.
Yes.
But it's interesting to me they had to bring the women and kids down from the top deck
Yes.
to A deck. I just assumed they loaded on A deck because there might have been people.
Because they sent all those people down there, right?
Uh-huh.
And then
so now we're
that's
hearing
why they
at
didn't
least
have anybody
something
up
else again.
top. So chaotic. But even it sounds like even before it hit this iceberg, that it was just busy.
It's
no
the
time to
Titanic.
catch your breath or anything.
I mean,
just
get out of here,
go.
of course, you know, it's
that was the
Titanic.
When the lady didn't want to get in, and he's like, "Pull her in." So we did,
and then she turned.
Yeah,
she pouted.
Yeah, you're welcome.
But then he also mentions the light.
Yes.
And also, I know I said this just briefly ago, but I just do like, again, in his retelling, that he saw something had happened, so he went down to get a bottle of biscuits.
Yes.
And I like that it was phrased, bottle of biscuits.
I appreciate that, personally.
Let me go grab these biscuits, and then we will get on that boat.
That's why they had to pull me on. Because
his assigned boat also was already, he said he was assigned to number 5, but by the time he got up there, it was already being lowered. So he was like, well, already late. I'm going to go grab a nice coffee at Starbucks and I'll get to work.
I'm going to get on that. I'll get some biscuits. And I'm very happy that there were 15 women crew members that got on different boats, even though they were told they weren't allowed on the first boat. So, shwoo for that.
Yeah, women and children, but not crew.
Not you.
Not if you're working. Your paycheck stops. We are in a disaster, so you are not allowed on the boat, and you will not be getting paid. But yeah, very interesting pair. I think they went well together, those two testimonies, and very interesting. We're seeing a lot of echoes of other people's testimony, and then you have a little summary of our gentleman.
He continued working in the sea well after the Titanic went down. He moved from Liverpool to Southampton because the White Star Line moved that way. So he moved to stay with them, and so he just
kept
on. You're good at what you do. You just keep doing it. So that was cool. And that's all we have for this one. So we'll see you next time.
Bye. As always, thank you for listening. Please be sure to let us know what you're thinking in the comments or at titanictranscripts@gmail.com. Also, be sure to check out our Facebook page, Titanic Transcripts, for more interesting tidbits and general discussion.